last video we finished the carby. I had to revisit that float. It had another little leak in it, so I resoled it and it seems good now. The fuel's on. We're going to leave the inlet hose off for the moment. We don't need that on for what we're going to do. But now we're going to come around the front. We're going to set the camera up around here somewhere and we're going to do some tests on the electrics. And last week we had no spark at all, so we're going to try and run through the spark and show you what we find as we go. Okay, we've put the battery back in up here. We've charged the battery up and put it in. Now whoever set this up originally has set it up negative earth, so we suppose it's been running like that. Normally with the generator it's positive earth, but look, they say it was running like that and who are we to say it wasn't. So we'll just run through. The coil's on back the front if it's that case, but that, look, it's not that important, that part either. So with the positive battery lead, you have two terminals on top of the gearbox here for starting, for your starter switch. You should have battery power to one of those, so I think you can see a little red light comes on. So we know we have battery power, so we have a complete circuit. Now I've got the earth of my test light over on this earth strap. Okay, so we know it's getting to here, but how about we put it over on the coil, on one of the coil mounts or something like that, and that way we know that we can test that we have a good connection here. So we still have a red light there. I can't actually see while I'm doing it if you can see the red light, but then the wire from the red light comes up to the voltage regulator here, and this will be the B positive terminal on your voltage regulator. So we still have a good connection to there. And there's a little jumper wire comes off there, and that goes to a small push-pull switch. Now the push-pull switch is just here. So with it pulled out, that's switch on. So what we need to do now is follow that wire back down, and the wire from the ignition switch should come down to the ignition coil. So I'll try and get you set up for there. Okay, this is the wire to the ignition coil from the switch. So now we test that for voltage. And we have the red light on, so we know we have voltage here. So if we just poke that back on, we should have voltage here, which we do. And then the wire that goes to the distributor, we should have voltage there, which we do. So that quick little test does a couple of things for us. It tells us that our switch is okay. Now another way to test the switch is to get the little red light showing, turn the switch off, on, off, on. No worries at all. So we know the switch is working. We know we have continuity through the coil. Now, we've had a bit of a discussion through the week about resistance through a coil. So, if you set your digital multimeter to, say, 20k on the ohms, and I'll try and get that to where you can see it. You can't really, can you? And what we do, we short it out across the two terminals of the coil. We have 1 ohm or 0. So when you put the both leads together, you also have 0. So that tells us we have good continuity through the ignition coil. So, and that's important to know how it's going. Now this wire here, it goes onto your ignition points in the distributor, and the voltage going into the coil gets let to build up. As soon as the points open, the voltage drops and causes a spark out of the coil here. So what we can do is by hand, we can actually go bang, 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 bang with that wire and test this coil. So we'll get set up for that and we'll come back. With the distributor here, when you're sitting at 11 o'clock, that's number 1. For what we're doing now, it just doesn't matter where we are. We're just going to pop the dizzy off and give it a clean up. I see there's no insulation around this terminal here. I'll try and get you down. Yeah, around here there's no insulation there, so we'll fix that. We'll run through the distributor. We might just pop him out and do that on the bench. Alright girls, you've been sitting outside a long time. Alright, I'll get this off, we'll go into the bench and we'll come back then. The condenser's not even bloody screwed down and the screw's rattling around inside there, and that's firm to turn, which that should be easy. Now you'll remember when we pulled it off, the rotor was this way. That's all we need to remember. And reason being, you can see at that end there, see how that little cross is not in the centre of the shaft? That will only go down in that hole one way. You can't bugger it up. So another thing that these carbies do is where this bracket is here, you'll see a little split pin goes through and that holds the clip. But what happens is people get into them with a screwdriver and this one's got no bottom end there in it, and looks reasonably fresh, but it just wasn't there. And what happens, people either try and turn them by grabbing this and turning it, or lever on it. So we'll have a look and we'll just see. It should have some insulation around there and it should be a lot easier to turn than it is. It's feeling quite poor there, and the points and all. Well, oh yeah, I can get that out. So that should have a little bit of felt down there, so a lot of things wrong with it, but we'll try and fix it all up. Okay, first thing on our distributor, what I like to do is just get all the stuff that we don't need on it out of the way. So we'll close the split pin up there. Pull this fella off, the little clip. Put him up over there. Now the tag's half falling off on the front here, so there's one screw missing out of that, we'll have to find one. Now this clamp down the bottom, you loosen this off to turn your distributor a little bit. This was in that tight, we actually had to get a hammer up in under to bash this fella out. It was rusted into the bore of the engine there. So we'll loosen this clamp off. Now there's a square nut at the back here, and it should be captive within the two flats there, but it doesn't seem to want to be. So we'll just try and loosen that off enough to get the clamp out of the way. I'll zoom out a bit so I'm not out of frame so often. So the frame with the pointer on, your timing pointer, goes to the bottom, and There's another little alloy plate where you can adjust your timing back and forth, but we'll get into that when we put it back on. Now the condenser should be screwed down so the body earth's out, and that's just floating around there, so that's never worked for a long time. We'll just take that off there. I have found from time to time a little bit of fuel hose around here will help seal this off, but we'll try it. And loosen the points contact screws. And that should slide out, the condenser should slide off out of the way. Now your points, there's just 2 screws there for those. We'll take those screws right out. And then the points should slide up out of the way. These ones are jammed on the pivot there. That's so tight that it doesn't want to come up. And the strap here, where the power gets in, it just slides up. It's got a little slot. And now we should be able to wiggle those points out. It's starting to rain, so the shed might get a bit noisy. Oh, there's the top come off. So we can discard those points. This little bolt here, it comes through a little stand there and it has to be insulated. This can't touch the bottom plate here in case it earths out. So it needs to be insulated from anywhere else on the distributor, which is a common problem. They get full of dirt and moisture and that earths out. So we should be able to just run this screw right down. We may have to hold the screw in hard just so it doesn't want to go round and round on us. It still wants to, so we'll find our 7, actually find our 3/8. It'll be just up here somewhere. Now we need another hand. Alright, that's going to give us a bit of trouble. Get a little WD spray on it and just being difficult, this one. The trouble is that these get over tightened over time, and with being over tightened the threads get stretched, so they get quite hard to undo. But we might just leave that little bit there. Now on the bottom end I said before about it being off centre, and you can see that the little cross hatch here is off centre, so There's no other marks on it that I can see. So what I like to do, just to save time later, is I put a little centre punch mark there. So there's one little mark down here. I might even try and hit it, eh? And then another little mark on the end of the shaft. Not right on the end of the shaft, oh, not right on the side of the shaft, so it makes it burr out and gets fat. But just so there's a witness mark down here and up here. So now we just need to knock the pin out. The roll pin goes through and holds that in. So we just need to that's a little bit tall, but anyway we'll so it's a bit shorter. And we'll just knock this pin out. I'll go and do that on an anvil, so I'm not knocking my bench around, and I'll come back once I've got the pin out. Well, there we go. I actually had to drill that all the way out. I have had them in the past. I've had them with roll pins in them, but someone must have been there. This was solid, and sometimes you just got to drill the top a bit and that'll let it bump through. But this one, I had to fight him all the way, so that's okay. Now on the bottom here, we have a fibre thrust washer. Look, it's just a fibre washer. This one's broken. And it just helps. This is in oil, you know, runs off the end of the oil pump, so it just stops it rubbing on the bottom there, so that's no worries. Okay, so now we've taken the bottom out. It's still a bit grumbly in here. So there's a screw here, another one here, and that will let us take this plate out. There's actually a screw down the centre here too that I probably should have undone a little sooner. I think we'll get this top plate out anyway. And there's the screw we've been having trouble with the insulation. So we'll have to deal with that in some way or another. Clean it all up. Now the shaft should just come out. And what it has, there's a bush down this end and there's a bearing at the top. And look at that bearing, you can't... That bearing's moving a little bit, but not much. And we have centrifugal advance here as well. Now what happens, these get all tight and seized up, these little springs get stretched. You'll notice one spring is heavier than the other, that's fine. We're good with that. But they've got to move freely. That bearing, oh geez, that's crook. Now I'll just hold it on the cam lobe here. See if we can undo the screw in the centre. There we go. Now there's a little hole down that screw. Now look, every time, every few hundred hours or something, like 500 hours maybe, you just need a drop of oil down there. And the drop of oil lubricates this shaft, and with this shaft being lubricated, that helps it turn a bit independently. See, when the shaft's turning and it gets to a certain speed, these weights throw out. Now I'll try and hold the bottom still, and when the weights throw out, you notice that it turns that top piece, and that advances or retards your timing. Faster it goes, the faster an engine goes, you usually advance them up, the faster it goes. So the faster this goes, these weights would come out, and in holding the bottom dead still, I'll try and get that back in there again. Oh, come on, Lance. Mind on the job. So by holding that dead still, when these weights come out, that advances it and fixes, helps with your timing, helps with power. So just the drop, it doesn't need very much. That keeps that loose on that shaft. So that comes off. You have a look for wear on the pins and that. Normally this is okay. You have a look for cam wear. They're normally usable. Now that just slides off like that. This one just slides off here. I usually leave them assembled until I come to putting them together. And you can see this bearing here. That hasn't turned in many moons. Well, you can force it, but what's the point of that? So what we might do while we got it at hand, I'll set that up in a vise properly and support the bottom of this shaft, and by supporting the shaft we should be able to just bump that down and replace that. So if that bearing gets seized, you can buy them. I think I have one here. I'll give you the number when I find him. With this being seized, if that's seized right up, that would just chew the bottom of your housing here out. This housing's the same on many tractors. The little tag tells you what model the distributor is, and as in a TEA or a TED or a Leyland Morris Mini or something like that. They all use pretty much the same sort of setup, and the housing I believe is the same, and they just changed the tag, and there's a DM4 and a few other things like that. So anyway, we'll have a look and see if we've got a better housing than this without little broken bits out here. And it's a bit of a dicky way they did it over the years. If you look here, you can see, I'll try and keep that in focus, Lance, eh? You can see where they've had the pin in there, and then they smack it here with like a coal chisel and fold this piece over. They haven't got much of a hope of lasting probably, has it? So anyway, look, we'll clean a few parts up and we'll come back. You can see where that plate is, nearly looks like a water level, but I doubt that it is. But there's another little washer hiding in there. So look, that's all there is to pulling it apart. I'll clean everything up and we'll come back, and I don't know whether it'll be this video or the next video, and we'll run through assembling it and setting the points and doing all that sort of thing.